Hello and welcome back to NoBS. Today we turn to talking about one of my favorite movies of all time, a classic American comedy film called Wedding Crashers. Wedding Crashers was a hilarious movie starring Owen Wilson and Vince Vaughn, and it of course was about weddings. The guys would go to weddings and they'd try to get dates and meet up with girls and do all kinds of fun stuff like that. It turned into a love story. They both hook up with some girls and fall for them. Things like that happen. It's kind of your typical romantic comedy slash kind of like a bro movie, guys hooking up with girls, things like that take place. And the reason it's come up now is now that many years have passed and the culture has dramatically changed out there, especially in Hollywood, these days a movie like Wedding Crashers has become somewhat offensive. That's why we found this video that's going after Wedding Crashers, even calling it toxic, which of course we could tell is leaning towards the meme, the liberal meme of saying men are filled with toxic masculinity. Yes, there's a lot of anti-male, anti-white guy stuff going on out there in the world today. And it looks like we found another video that does just that. It comes from a YouTube channel called The Take. They talk about a lot of movie stuff. They're typically not really political, but they do have a left lean to them and they do go after a few things, especially guys, especially movies like this. And when I saw them going after Wedding Crashers, like one of my favorite movies, calling it toxic just because guys are getting with girls and having dates and dating them and stuff like that. Successful guys are being shunned these days. And that's the basic premise. We want to combat that and rebut that in today's video. So we're going to get to that soon. We're going to go over the video, talk more about Wedding Crashers and this video about it real soon. But first, let's take a quick moment to check out our sponsor. Hey guys, today I'm real excited to be offering you this awesome game called Election Year Knockout 2020. This game is a lot of fun. It's got a lot of cool features and really fun and interesting characters too. Essentially, it's a boxing-based game made for the PC and mobile devices, and its theme is of course the election year. It talks about a lot of things that happened during last year. It has characters from the events of last year, political candidates, the president, his opponents. We have other political figures in there too, and you get to box with them and have this fun little boxing match. It's a lot of fun. It's really cool, good graphics, like an interesting art style that I liked, and the fact that they incorporate these characters like the people we've been talking about in these videos week after week. It's fun to get them into a game and to get them into something as cool as this. Election Year Knockout is a boxing game in the style of Punch-Out, a series that's a classic boxing adventure now brought into the present with this American political based theme. So it's a lot of fun. It's available on the PC through the Steam store. You can also get it on iOS, on your iPhone in the Apple store. Android has it available too. All the links are available below in the description. Check out the links, get it on your platform of choice, and thanks for your time. And now back to the show. Great, now that that's out of the way, let's go ahead and turn to this video. It's called, right here, it says Toxic Takeaways, Wedding Crashers Bad Lessons. And as you can see, it's actually reviewed pretty well for them. It's going over well in this kind of community. This video is actually on a Hollywood-based channel. They talk about movies and TV shows, so there's not a lot of pushback there, but I thought we could talk about it and go over why I think they're misrepresenting it and using kind of the modern lens to view this classic movie now. It's not that old, but it is over 10 years old. I believe it's from around 2005. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'll double check that later, but let's first see what this video has to say.
You ever think we're being, I don't want to say sleazy, because that's not the right word, but a little irresponsible?
Wedding Crashers arrived at the peak of the bromantic comedy, taking its cues from the rom-com genre, but focusing instead on male friendship. The bromance dominated the 2000s with stories about immature guys who suddenly find themselves forced to grow up.
Okay, so they're already seeming to talk with some contempt. You can hear them say, oh, bro comedies are really big in the mid-2000s. Wedding Crashers was from 2005, as this thing just said. This quote was from Knocked Up, movie from 2007. I mean, they're not wrong. They're not wrong. There was a lot of bro comedies back then, but I think the main difference in what they're talking about, what they're not mentioning, is another reason why is this stuff was still acceptable before the, say, 2012 was when the modern woke era really started to take off. Anything before 2010 could still get away with cursing, having rated R movies, comedies that were pushing the edge, pushing the line in sorts of humor, saying stuff that's offensive maybe, or talking, commentating on race-based stuff, you know, things that are taboo now. You can't talk about race, can't talk bad about chicks. Chicks have to be super powered and untouchable. Guys can't joke about this or that. So there is another reason this has changed, and it was still okay back then. But yes, I could totally agree. A movie like Wedding Crashers or Knocked Up would not likely get made in 2021, at least not in the same way. And certainly they would have to add in some feminism or wokeness stuff that just wasn't present back in the day. And I think this video is avoiding that harsh truth because it undermines the point they're trying to make is, oh, we've evolved. They probably think this is better that we're not having these guy movies anymore, when really I honestly quite miss them.
In Wedding Crashers, this happens for Owen Wilson's John and Vince Vaughn's Jeremy, a couple of bachelor playboys who spend their summers sneaking into weddings just to sleep with women, until they meet two sisters who throw their whole lifestyle into question.
You can't marry this guy.
Why?
Because I'm falling for you.
So I want to go over that quote because I noticed some of the comments were really against that quote, and they were all going in line with this video. They believe that this movie is that dated. I think it's still funny. I understand the fact that it does seem a little sleazy, maybe is what they said in the intro. That's even a line said within the movie. He says, not sleazy, but just irresponsible. Like there is a kind of bad part to it. Like I'm not denying that they weren't, going around and being promiscuous, dating lots of girls. Some of that can get you into trouble. I'm not saying this is a big defense for that, but the movie's all in good fun. They learn their lesson. They actually learn by the end of the movie. Like you got to consider the lessons in what the movie does in its story arc, because by the end they stop doing weddings and they settle down with their girlfriends and do the right thing. They realize that they went too far. So the movie doesn't really promote that fully. In the beginning, sure, it looks like fun and it's definitely a cool part of the premise, but as far as pushing that forward and having toxic masculinity, I think the people that are against this, I don't know, they just don't like the fact that the guys were getting over and having lots of dates and stuff like that. And back to this quote that they just did from the movie, like a lot of people in the comments were going against that, like it was so offensive and creepy or something, but I could see where it's romantic. I mean, he's trying to stop her from marrying some other dude because he likes her now, and that's a great kind of romantic gesture, and you hope that they get together.
But have they really learned their lesson? And what lessons does the movie leave us with? Throughout the film, we watch John and Jeremy objectify women, con their way into bed, and generally treat everyone like pawns in their own sexual game.
So this is another thing, like they portray it as conning, like, oh, they're really, really hurting these girls. They're tricking them or fooling them. There's some kind of charade. And I realize there are a few jokes in the movie. There is some points where they do have things where it seems like a trick. I mean, they use fake names. I think sometimes they pretend to be a veteran to get drinks. Like that's a joke. There's other jokes like that. But I think the thing they're overlooking is this is not an offensive thing. These ladies are willing participants. These guys are likable, respectable guys. They're like, Owen Wilson, he was like a heartthrob in movies back then. Vince Vaughn is a big, tall, handsome dude. Like they're not getting fooled and tricked into something. They're not like falling on the guys and falling into beds with them or something. It's like, no, they're getting seduced. The guys are taking care of them too. They're all having a fun night out of it. I think anyone that enters and gets romantic with someone at a wedding party, I think there is some kind of expectation there. You're like, you realize that you're having fun and you might just have a fun night or something like that. It's not as negative as this thing is trying to portray.
Here's our take on some of the most toxic takeaways from Wedding Crashers and how this bromance shows little love for anyone else.
You're watching The Take. Let us know your take.
Thanks to NordVPN for
So now they're getting into an ad, but I don't think we should be surprised that this channel is run by liberal women. And we'll get to this first takeaway and move forward. But I think the basic premise and the groundwork has been laid there. We know that they're against this movie because it's guys, and in their mind, they're getting over on the girls. It seems to me, honestly, like I don't want to go anti-girl here. I have nothing but respect for the ladies, but this kind of angle, it seems bitter to me. It seems like they're upset, like the girls making this video or whoever's taking this stance, they're upset because they feel like they've been wronged by a guy before. That's the kind of feeling that some girls get after a date or after a hookup or after hanging out with a guy for a few weeks and not hearing from him again. There's just this kind of angle where they seem to feel so wrong. And I'm sure they are wrong sometimes. Like, don't get me wrong. There's not there's a lot of bad guys out there, there's bad girls out there, but this whole angle is sounding like bitter chicks mad at successful guys, and it's going with that angle. And the toxic angle is obviously toxic masculinity, and this is just like an anti-guy thing, which is upsetting me a little bit. Why I want to cover this thing in the picture says lying is okay because you can't hide true feelings. I'm not sure where they're going with that, but let's hear it.
Hide true feelings. John and Jeremy pretend to be army veterans, firefighters, and 9 mythical heroes. They crash Indian, Irish, and Jewish weddings, adopting fake personas with just a dash of cultural insensitivity.
Excited to be here.
They present themselves as someone else, with the sole purpose of manipulating women into sleeping with them. John and Jeremy are knowingly misleading these women while taking advantage of their emotions.
So there's just more of the angle of them. They're lying. They're coming up with these personas. It's portrayed in a fun way, but I think the video and the angle of this thing is just trying to take it the worst way possible. Just trying to slander the guys and not really recognize that, first of all, this is a comedy movie. It's not meant to insult women or anything like that. It's meant to entertain everyone. I think girls would even like this movie because it's fun too. And I think in the real world, people recognize that guys are always trying to date girls. That's just the circle of life. I understand in some cases it seems a little wrong, especially there is some deception going on here. They're changing their names. They're going to weddings. Sometimes they're not invited. But as I mentioned earlier, the name and their job isn't like the end of the whole story. Just because you say your name is John instead of Bruce and that you work at a Taco Bell instead of a Wendy's, I mean, they're just re-skinning themselves. They're still talking to a person at a wedding. They're still not like forcing them into anything. I think if anything, like what this might actually imply is that women are easily fooled or just susceptible to deception and just get tricked. And that's what the take feels like they're saying. I don't think that, but it's kind of implying that they could just be totally tricked. And all of a sudden, if you say the right combination of words, a girl is just going to hook up with you. And that's bad on them. If that is the case and they're not just properly getting seduced and wanting to have a good time with an attractive and successful man, which is the way I see it as two willing participants. Sure, the guys portray themselves and try to up themselves. Every guy since the beginning of time has come up with some small little exaggerations to try and get laid. But the point here is they're trying to point the guys and paint them as evil and bad. They're painting the girls as innocent and not even part of the scenario. It's like they don't have any agency, which is a typical portrayal for feminist people, which seems to be the ones that make this video. And that's why I disagree with it so much. That's why I think we need to combat this. This is anti-male propaganda. It's also misrepresenting a classic comedy and not really taking it for what it is. It's a fun movie with jokes. A lot of these jokes, like the Purple Heart thing, it's just a line. Like they're not really saying, the movie's not saying you should have stolen valor and use it to get free drinks. No one wants you to do that. It's just a joke in a comedy movie that was very well liked. And that's why, part of the reason why they're coming back on it now. So with that said, that about wraps things up. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Make sure you comment your thoughts on everything below. Subscribe if you're new, and we'll see you on the next post.